Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents How to Raise a Citizen, and Why It's Up to You to Do It, by Lindsey Cormack, narrated by Katharine Chin. Publisher's note: in this audio edition, you will hear references to figures present in the print and ebook formats of the book. Limit of liability / disclaimer of warranty. While the publisher and author have used their best efforts in preparing this book, they make no representations or warranties with respect to the accuracy or completeness of the contents of this book, and specifically disclaim any implied warranties of merchantability or fitness for a particular purpose. No warranty may be created or extended by sales representatives or written sales materials. The advice and strategies contained herein may not be suitable for your situation. You should consult with a professional where appropriate. Further, readers should be aware that websites listed in this work may have changed or disappeared between when this work was written and when it is read. Neither the publisher nor authors shall be liable for any loss of profit or any other commercial damages, including, but not limited to, special, incidental, consequential, or other damages. Introduction. I started writing this book when my daughter, nicknamed Bunny, was 8 years old. Throughout her life, I've read numerous how-to books. How to establish a sleep routine, how to do potty training, how to handle tantrums, how to teach her to read, and how to brace for the challenges of adolescence. However, along the journey of raising her, I realized there was a significant gap in both our how-to books and society. We do not have collective habits in how to prepare children to be engaged, active participants in our democracy. Every year, I get to engage with a new set of 18 to 22-year-old students in my Introduction to U.S. Politics class. My younger students have just ventured out of their family homes and are learning to run their own schedules, take care of themselves, and navigate the world with increased independence. My older students are more focused on securing their future after college, having already become adept at managing these daily tasks. Regardless of age, up until this point, most of my students haven't had intentional discussions with any adults, including their parents, about what it means to be a citizen. Many of our college-aged students don't know how to vote, haven't read the Constitution, aren't aware of the local political offices responsible for quality-of-life decisions, lack understanding of the division of responsibilities, have never pondered the concept of federalism, and have formed their view of the court system based on television dramas. It's not anyone's fault in particular, but collectively we all bear some responsibility. I don't mean to place blame on parents by pointing this out. In many ways, today's parents have been let down by school systems and social norms that didn't prioritize civic education during our upbringing upbringing. However, parents have an essential role to play in rectifying this situation. Given the broken state of our politics, it's necessary that parents step up to the task. It wasn't until I began to be asked by elementary schools to prepare civics lessons that I truly considered writing a book for parents. I had the inkling that something like this would be helpful after 5 or so years of teaching college students who do not know the difference between the House and Senate. But it was in working directly with younger kids that I knew something like this needed to be written. The purpose of this book is to provide parents with a framework for having discussions about government and politics with their children in a way that feels fun and connective. It's also meant to encourage you to do this work. As parents with children under 18, we are all raising citizens, but often not intentionally. Many of us belong to the Gen X, Millennial, and now Gen Z cohorts, who were discouraged from discussing politics to avoid disagreements, and often lack a lot of political and government knowledge ourselves. In a time when politics feels contentious, if not disastrous, the ability to pass on civic know-how and model how to have difficult conversations are incredibly important things to give to our kids. By being capable and willing to talk about politics and government with our children, we empower them to navigate politics successfully and, in turn, lead better lives. As I often tell my students, politics is going to happen to us whether we like it or not, so we might as well understand how the system works. Political discussions make many of us uncomfortable, and some of us were brought up believing that these topics were off-limits. This must change. While many assume schools will adequately teach students how to hold elected officials accountable through voting, or even the very basics of our system, the reality falls short. As parents, we have to step in. If you feel like you don't know enough about government yourself, get ready to put that feeling away, because none of this is that hard to understand. When you're done with this book, you will be ready to talk about politics and government with your kids, and hopefully be convinced that you'll be doing them an enormous favor in doing so. Talking about politics and government doesn't have to feel bad. As someone who works in and studies this field professionally, I assure you that politics doesn't have to feel as dire as it sometimes does. As a mom and a professor of politics, I understand what it takes to talk to kids about politics. And in this book, I will guide you on what we, as parents, need to meet this moment. But I also know it's an uphill battle, because for many of us, politics and government are things we avoid talking about. For many of us, even the mention of politics is annoying. Sure, following the news is important, but understanding or caring about politics? That's pointless. Nothing ever changes. It's picking the least bad of two awful candidates. It's all rigged. They only care about themselves. It's the dirtiest industry there is. Nothing I do matters. Why should I care? These are exactly the thoughts that allow us to have the politics that we do. And many of those who are in positions of power now are just fine with that. The fewer people who know the rules, the less oversight any member of the government has. That's not good, and it's certainly not the world I want to be living in. It's not good for us parents, and it's not good for our children. Things feel bad when we don't understand them. They feel out of control when we feel insignificant and unable to change things, and things are not going our way. I get why politics can feel like that for many of us. There's also a winning or losing aspect of elections that can be defeating if you find yourself on the losing end. To start, try thinking about politics as a moving pendulum rather than a set game that is won or lost. Politics is certainly a game, but not one with fixed or forever winners and losers. It's a game that we influence, and we can change. It's a pendulum in that it's forever moving, but unlike a clock that is set to tell time consistently, the forces that move the system are people who move inconsistently. There will be times that feel like wins and times that feel like losses, but knowing that the outcome is not preordained and instead up to us to shape is quite powerful to consider. Talking politics can feel bad because we might disagree with someone, or not have a common starting point, or feel out of our depth in the discussion because it might be complicated. But here's the thing. No one ever knows everything about a political issue, or really any issue. We don't need to go into political discussions thinking we need to win or be right. Doing that only increases the likelihood that there are expectations and the potential for huge letdowns anyway. Instead of succumbing to feelings of despair, distrust, and outrage when you hear the word politics, try to think about a political discussion as a way to learn something new about a topic, or at least the way another person views the topic. It's truly an amazing power to be alive in a democracy today, but it's one that many of us decide to opt out of because it feels bad. But that doesn't have to be the case. If you work to reorient your perspective on politics and government as something to learn and pass on to your kids, it can actually feel pretty great. You will be doing yourself a service, and one for your kids as well as the wider community. This book aims to guide you through the process with patience and provide you with the tools to navigate politics in a more informed and empowered way. You might not consider yourself the epitome of an always voting, always engaged citizen, but that shouldn't discourage you from working on your parenting skills in this area. We are all living our own unique forms of citizenship and learning how to exercise our own power. By imparting these lessons to your children, you not only strengthen your own abilities, but also theirs. Partisanship and polarization. It's hard to escape the sense of fractiousness and polarization in our politics. Most of our media exacerbates this feeling with demonizing headlines, despair, outrage, and personally insulting debates meant to show us who's right and wrong. And partisanship, the labels of Republican and Democrat, dominates national politics. As you listen to this book, you'll notice it's not about raising children to align with a particular political party, but about raising engaged and informed citizens. I'm confident that parents with their own political leanings will find opportunities for discussions about partisanship. But I'll note that emerging research suggests that attempts to steer our children toward a specific political party can backfire. This doesn't mean that partisan divisions and polarization aren't pressing issues. They are. However, one way to address the ugliest aspects of our politics is by better understanding the underlying structures. Regardless of your political orientation, knowing how our government is structured is valuable because it allows you to better understand why things do or do not happen and what you can do to change that. When children have a more comprehensive view of government and politics, they can develop their own political agency, and that's really what we want for our kids. Raising a child is all about giving them the tools to act as their own agent of their lives. By equipping them to understand politics, we give them another form of power. My focus is on ensuring that everyone who is entitled to participate in and be affected by the outcomes of our political system understands the rules of the game. And because it's often the young and newly eligible voters who miss out on this knowledge, it's up to us as parents to work on remedying things. Our efforts as parents should focus on establishing a baseline of knowledge and encouraging our children to contemplate fundamental questions about government while teaching them how to have conversations on difficult subjects. This might sound like a lot of work. Before we jump in, let me make one thing clear. I'm not here to add to the overwhelming and never-ending list of parenting expectations. My goal isn't to dictate how or when you should discuss politics with your kids. Instead, I want to encourage you to maintain an ongoing and open dialogue while giving you the strategies and knowledge to do so. In today's parenting, there's often a tendency to shelter children from difficult situations and shield them from having to think about hard topics. While this approach may enhance their physical safety, it can also hinder their ability to navigate the complexities of life that previous generations of children had to face. Parents unintentionally shield their kids from tough topics by avoiding discussions about current events or controversial political issues altogether. Let's say there's a significant political event happening in the country, such as a presidential election. Instead of engaging their children in age-appropriate discussions about these topics, many parents might choose to avoid the topic completely, believing that the kids are too young or that it's not their place to be involved. Parents may avoid watching the news or discussing such matters in their household, effectively limiting their children's exposure to different perspectives and critical thinking opportunities. While the intention might be to protect the child's innocence or maintain a sense of stability, it can result in a lack of understanding and awareness about the world around them, ultimately depriving them of the chance to develop their own informed opinions and participate as a citizen. Though shielding means that parents may avoid uncomfortable discussions, the strategy just doesn't work in the long run. Kids have a way of finding out about politics, whether it's through overhearing a news broadcast while visiting a grandparent, scrolling through social media, listening in on conversations between older siblings and their friends, or engaging in discussions with other children at school. Children are sponges, absorbing information from their surroundings, so even if we try to shield them, they will inevitably stumble upon political topics. That's why it's better for us, as trusted sources in their lives, to be the ones who help them approach these topics in a thoughtful and age-appropriate manner. Just like with discussions about drugs and sex, avoiding politics won't keep our children in the dark. They will find out from other sources, and those sources may not provide accurate or balanced information. Just ask a history teacher about how TikTok influencers are changing their jobs in the classroom. As parents, we have the opportunity to create a safe and calm setting where we can discuss politics and government with our children, providing them with a rooted understanding of these topics over a long time horizon. We can establish ground rules, share our knowledge and perspectives, and help them navigate the complexities of the political landscape. While we can't control the eventual outcome or their ultimate opinions, we can give them the tools to make informed decisions and participate in civic life. Chapter Map. This book is structured for your convenience, allowing you to select sections that align with your specific needs. The first sections describe the current level of political knowledge among our youth and underscore why schools fall short in delivering adequate civic education. I then make the case for why parents should be agents of change and present frameworks that show parents how to do that. The second part of the book serves as a politics and government primer, offering a refresher on the basics of our system. If you feel the need to brush up on certain topics before getting into conversations with your children, this section will provide you with the necessary information. Already consider yourself a constitutional buff? Great! Then you've got a good way to start on that topic with your kids, and you can instead dive in on other topics that you might not feel so secure in. Chapter 1 sheds light on the concerning lack of knowledge about politics and government among the general population. Decades of research show a disheartening truth. Fewer than half of U.S. adults possess a basic understanding of our government's structure. As federal politics often dominates the headlines, the lack of awareness regarding local and state governance is even more glaring. A significant number of people struggle to name their state representatives, identify their state's governor, or grasp the legislative processes within their own state. This dearth of political knowledge poses a problem as it directly affects participation, particularly among first-time and younger voters. When people don't fully comprehend how the electoral system operates, they are less likely to engage and exercise their right to vote, and this is detrimental to our democracy. In this chapter, I discuss various issues associated with an underdeveloped understanding of politics. Limited civic participation is one consequence, as is vulnerability to manipulation and misinformation, as well as the erosion of trust in government. The repercussions of our civic deficit extend beyond mere mistrust and misunderstanding. Unfortunately, we have witnessed incidents in recent years where mistrust of government has escalated into acts of intimidation and violence. If a significant portion of the population feels disengaged and disempowered, our political system will end up representing only the interests of a dedicated few, leaving many others feeling resentful. This not only harms our society, but also exacerbates existing inequalities. It's a problem worth paying attention to as a parent. In Chapter 2, I outline the reasons behind our deficit in political know-how, the complexity of the U.S. system, a general aversion to discussing politics, ineffective strategies for political conversations, and the misplaced reliance on schools to teach political knowledge. The first hurdle is the complexity of our political system. It can be overwhelming, especially for people who are not deeply involved in politics, to fully grasp the workings of our system. But fear not. In the second part of this book, I'll teach you that there are fundamental pieces of information that can empower even the greenest novices among us to be effective and competent citizens. Second, there is historical taboo surrounding political conversations. Outdated etiquette rules, many rooted in the 19th century, discouraged criticism, nuanced discussions, and the exploration of different opinions. These so-called politeness norms have hindered our ability to engage in open discourse. Without this sort of practice in place for generations, a lot of us parents simply don't know where to start. I emphasize the need to challenge these norms and engage in conversations about the governance of our country. I address the common tendency for parents to shy away from discussing politics with their children. While age-appropriate discussions are important, completely avoiding political issues can limit a child's understanding of the world. We need to introduce fundamental concepts of citizenship, democratic values, and respectful engagement, gradually expanding the discussions as our children grow older. Third, we have an issue with our discourse. Problems arise when we don't talk politics at all with our children, or when we get wrapped up in the negative and oftentimes denigrating side of things. When we focus solely on the negative aspects of politics and government, we inadvertently discourage our children from considering careers in these fields. But as parents, we want to inspire them to become future leaders who can tackle society's greatest challenges. We need to teach them about the process. Instead of exposing them primarily to sensational news headlines based on outrage and knee-jerk reactions, parents can provide a balanced perspective that instills curiosity and a desire to actively participate. Finally, our schools are not up to this task. Many dedicated educators would love schools to be robust sites of civic learning, but pressures to increase test scores and the fear of blowback from angry parents have forced many schools to scale back their civic focus. Chapter 3 argues that it's time to recognize the incredible power we have as parents to be catalysts for change. Whether we've hesitated due to concerns about politeness, frustrations with the state of politics, or even our own uncertainties, we need to understand the importance of engaging our children in political conversations. Our goal should not be to raise children who simply echo our political beliefs, but to nurture informed and engaged citizens who can think critically and form their own conclusions. As parents, we can engage in years of meaningful conversations with our children. We must provide our children with the tools and knowledge to talk about politics confidently and navigate our complex systems. Leaving this void unfilled and allowing others to shape their views is not a promising approach. Just like discussing important topics such as drugs and sex, having a trusted guiding hand when it comes to politics is necessary. And that's where parents step in. By initiating conversations about politics and government early on, we can shape the way our children dream, think, and create a brighter political environment for everyone. It may seem daunting at first, but it's a responsibility we should embrace. In Chapter 4, I provide a set of frameworks to have meaningful conversations about politics and government with your kids. Whether you're a political enthusiast or feel uncertain about these topics, you'll find valuable guidance to navigate these discussions. If you're passionate and well-informed about politics, seize the opportunity to share your expertise and help your kids understand different perspectives. If you have reservations or lack familiarity with political topics, don't let that discourage you. This chapter emphasizes the importance of overcoming hesitations and offers strategies for researching and learning together with your children. Remember, this is a journey of exploration and growth for both you and your kids. While some topics may be more challenging to discuss with children, this chapter doesn't just provide you with a static script or a checklist of topics to cover. Instead, it's a set of adaptable conversation structures that you can use. These structures will allow you to address a wide range of emerging topics, whether it's issues of political violence and war, expression and equality, or opportunity and prosperity. The goal is to give you a set of starting points that can be customized to fit any conversation. To ensure that the conversations are age-appropriate, I provide guidance on what to discuss with children of different ages. Drawing insights from political socialization research, I categorize discussions into 3 age groups: young grade school kids, ages 5 to 9, pre-adolescents and young adolescents, ages 10 to 14, and more independent teenagers, ages 15 to 18. By tailoring the conversations to each age group's specific needs, you can provide information that is suitable for their developmental stage. This chapter also gives examples of how kids can influence politics, even when they're not yet eligible to vote. In the second part of the book, chapters 5 through 9, I'll dig into what your children need to know before they step out into the world to be informed participants in our political system. I'll provide you with a set of basic concepts and details that will empower your kids to handle politics with ease, regardless of where they choose to make their lives. These chapters serve as a guide for anyone looking to refresh their knowledge and understanding of politics and government. Chapter 5 first spells out the things that you and your kids need to know to be as effective in politics as possible. If you take nothing else from this book, take that list and make sure you and your kids figure out a way to understand the 5 necessary things to know to make sense of our politics. The chapter then gets into the foundational principles that shape the U.S. government. This includes concepts like republicanism, democracy, and majority rule, the fundamental ideas that help us understand how our government works. This chapter is designed to make things more accessible for parents, making it easier for you to answer your children's questions. By getting a grasp on the basic principles, you'll be quicker to figure out specific political issues because you'll have a working framework for bigger picture questions. Voting is at the heart of democracy, and Chapter 6 is all about demystifying the process. From understanding how to register and participate in elections, to exploring different election structures like primaries and caucuses, you'll leave this chapter with the knowledge needed to engage in the electoral process effectively. In Chapter 7, I explain the components of the U.S. Constitution. I provide an overview of the core document and its amendments, giving you and your kids a solid understanding of this essential document that shapes our government. Chapter 8 examines federalism and the division of power between the federal, state, and local governments. While national politics often grab the headlines, it's necessary to recognize the significant work happening at the state and local levels. In this chapter, I discuss the roles and responsibilities of each level of government, shedding light on how they work together to serve the needs of the people. By understanding who is responsible for what, you and your kids can make informed decisions and know whom to reach out to when you want to make a change in your community. You'll also find that if you investigate the local politics in your area, most of the people operating at that level don't seem as monstrous as the stories that we are told about federal politicians. Most of the people serving in government, whether in elected or appointed positions, truly believe that they are trying to make their part of the world better and generally try to do right by those who elected them to power. Finally, in Chapter 9, I conclude with a hopeful outlook on the transformation that can occur in American politics with more interested and prepared participants. I address the common misconception that politics is pointless and emphasize that it is, in fact, practical for shaping our communities and laws. I highlight the significance of political preparedness in tackling the complex issues our society faces. By becoming knowledgeable and engaged, we can bridge the gap between our wishes and making real change happen.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?